Good morning, students. So, today we will be starting the next chapter of history, Kings and Kingdoms of the Early Medieval Period. So, today we will be studying about the kings and the kingdoms of that time. In last chapter, we studied about the complete medieval period. In this class, we will be studying about the kings and kingdoms of that time. So, first, the emergence of new dynasties, how all these new dynasties emerged. By the 7th century, there were big landlords or warrior chiefs in different regions of the subcontinent. So by the 7th century, there were big landlords and warriors in the different regions of the subcontinents. Existing kings often acknowledged them as their samanthas or subordinates. So all these big landlords or warriors were acknowledged or addressed by the kings as their samanthas or the subordinates. They were expected to bring gifts for their kings or overlords and provide them with military support. So all these big landlords, or we can say the samanthas, they were expected to bring gifts for the king as well as they were expected to provide the king with the military support. Some such kingdoms were those of Rashtrakutas, Chalukyas, Gurjaras, Pratiharas, etc. So some of these kingdoms were the Rashtrakutas, Chalukyas, Gurjara, Pratiharas, and so on. So first we will be studying about the Rajputs. They are the descendants of Lord Rama, that is Surya Vamsaya, we commonly known as Surya Vanshis, or Lord Krishna, that is Chandravansha, or the hero who sprang from the sacrifice fire. Rajputs belong to the early medieval period. The Rajput period was 647 AD to 1200 AD. From the death of Harsha to the 12th century, the destiny of India was mostly in the hands of various Rajput dynasties. From the death of Harsha, he was one of the Rajput leaders. Until 12th century, the destiny of India was almost every time held in the hands of the Rajput leaders only. They belong to ancient Kshatriya families. So they all belong to the ancient Kshatriya families. This was all about the Rajputs that we studied. Now the Palas. Palas were also one of the kingdoms, one of the kings and the kingdoms or the dynasties of the medieval period. The Pala dynasty, which originated in the region of Bengal. So always remember, the Pala dynasty was originated in Bengal as an imperial power during the late classical period on the Indian subcontinent. The dynasty was named after its ruling dynasty, whose rulers bore names ending with the suffix of Palau. So the Pala dynasty got its name from its rulers only. They had a name of a suffix that is ending with Palau, and from this Palau only they gave their dynasty a name that was Palas. And Palas or the Palau means protector. This word, the Pala, means protector. They were followers of the Mahayana and Tantric schools of Buddhism. They were insightful diplomats and military conquerors. So they were insightful. That means they were very intelligent diplomats and they were military conquerors, that they were very good warriors. Their army was equipped with war elephant cavalry, and they also had a very good military base. They had a very good army with them, and all of their army was equipped with elephants and other things that were required in the war. So now we'll study about some of the rulers of Pala. One was the Gopala. Gopala one. Gopala was the one only who made this Pala dynasty, who was the founder of the Pala dynasty. So you can see in both of their names, Gopala and Dharampala. You can see Pala. So from this Pala only, from their last name, that is the suffix of their name, they made the name of their dynasty, that was the Palas. So let's study about the person who originated or who was the founder of the Pala dynasty, that was Gopala. He was elected by a group of regional chieftains, and then after he founded the dynasty. So he was elected by the people over there only, the chief people of the region, and then he founded the dynasty, that was Pala dynasty. Ramacharita was written in his reign, and which Pala rulers was as the descendants of Solar dynasty. Then Dharampal or Dharampala. He was real founder of Pala dynasty because he greatly expanded the boundaries of the empire and made the Pala a dominant power in the northern and the eastern India. So we can say that he was the real founder of the Pala dynasty because he expanded the Pala dynasty so much that he made the Pala dynasty dominant in northern and eastern India. He was a great patron of Buddhism. He used to follow Buddhism. He revived the Nalanda University and founded the Vikramshila University. He built the great Vihara at Somapuri in Berendri and the Vihar in Paharpur. Next is the Gurjara Pratiharas. Gurjara Pratiharas we already studied. This was one of the kingdoms at that time. So we will be studying about the Gurjara Pratiharas now. They ruled over Western India and parts of Upper Gangetic Valley. So they ruled over the Western India and the upper parts of the Ganga Valley. The founder of empire was Hari Chandra. So this empire, the Gujara Pratihara, this was founded by Hari Chandra. They rose to power as they defeated the northern boundaries from invasion from 712 to 1000. So they rose into power, or they got name when they defeated the people who were trying to invade or who were trying to get into the boundaries of northern boundaries in the year 712 to 1000. So as they were able to defeat the people who were trying to invade the northern boundaries, they came into people's eyes. Mihir Bhoja was famous as he captured Kannauj and extended his empire to Punjab, Awadh, Malwa, and Gujarat. So Mihir Bhoja, he was one of the Gurjara Pratihara ruler or the king. He was most famous among all the Gujara Pratihara kings because he captured Kannauj and extended his empire. He expanded the Gurjara Pratihara's empire so much that he was one of the most famous emperor of that time because he captured Kannauj, Punjab, Awadh, Malwa, and Gujarat. They declined in 10th century with the invasion of Muhammad of Ghazni. So the end of the Gujara Pratihara empire marked in 10th century when Muhammad of Ghazni entered India or came to India. He defeated Gujara Pratiharas and this marked the ending of their rule. Now the Rashtrakutas. We'll be studying about Rashtrakutas. They were a powerful dynasty of Deccan region known as Samanthas of the Chalukyas. So they were known as the Samanthas of the Chalukyas. As the Chalukyan kingdom declined, Danti Durga, founder of Rashtrakuta. So Danti Durga was the founder of Rashtrakuta kingdom. Declared his independence after overthrowing his Chalukyan overlord. So as the Chalukyan kingdom was declining, as the Chalukyan kingdom declined, the founder of Chalukyan kingdom, Rashtrakuta kingdom, that was Dhanti Durga, he declared his independence, that he is independent, and he overthrew the Chalukyan things and Chalukyan kingdom. He performed a ritual ceremony called Hiranya Garbha. Then after this, he performed a ceremony called Hiranya Garbha. It was supposed to lead to the rebirth to the performer as a Kshatriya, even if he was not won by the birth. So what this Danti Durga, what he did was he performed a ceremony, a ritual ceremony called Hiranya Garbha. So this ceremony is supposed to give the person who is performing the ceremony a rebirth in the form of Kshatriya. Basically, it was believed that if a person is performing Hiranyagarbha, he will be taking rebirth as a Kshatriya, even if he is not a Kshatriya by birth. So basically, when Chalukya kingdom came to an end, the Dhanti Durga, he declared himself free of Chalukya overload and he performed Hiranyagarbha so that he can rebirth as a Kshatriya. Govinda, Amog, Havarsha, Krishna are some of well-known Rashtrakuta rulers. So these are some of the well-known Rashtrakuta rulers. Now, tripartite struggle. What is tripartite struggle? Kannauj in the Ganga Valley was a prized area. For centuries, ruler belonging to Gurjara, Pratihara, Rashtrakuta, and Pala fought for control over Kannauj. So, Kannauj, it lies in the Ganga Valley and it is a very prized possession. Everyone wants to have Kannauj in their own capturism, or everyone wants to rule Kannauj. So for so many centuries, the rulers of Gurjara, Pratihara, Rashtrakuta and Pala dynasty, they all used to fight against each other to capture Kannauj. So this is why, because all the three people were fighting against Kannauj, all the three were struggling to have their rule on Kannauj. That is why it was known as tripartite struggle. That three means try, so that's why try. That is when three people were fighting to have their rule on Kannauj, that is known as tripartite struggle. Kannauj was located on the Ganga trade route and was connected to Silk route. So basically, Kannauj had a Ganga route and was also connected to the Silk route. So that is why it was very helpful as we take it into the commercial or the economic factor. It gave the kings a lot of money. That is why each and every king want to capture Kannauj, and that is why all the three kingdoms were fighting against Kannauj to capture it. Now, administration of regional kingdoms. Kings shared their administrative powers with Samanthas, Brahmins, traders, and associations of peasants. So the kings used to share their powers with them. Peasants, cattle keepers, artisans, and all those who produced something had to pay taxes or rents, and traders had to pay revenue. So the cattle keeper, artisans, they all had to pay tax or rents to the government or the king, and the traders also had to pay the revenue. That is the tax. Under the Chola dynasty, there were around 4,400 different types of taxes, from which Betty, that are the forced labor, and Kadamai, land revenue, were most common. So in Chola dynasty, there were 400 types of different taxes, among which the forced labor and the land revenue were most common taxes. At that time, in the kings also, the taxes were taken from the people, the revenue was generated so that the mm, kingdom can function properly. The reasons of collecting taxes were to fulfill finance of the king's establishments, to build temples and forts, and to fight wars. So all these taxes were collected for the development of the kingdom, for new establishments in the kingdom, to build temples and forts, and to use it in the wars that were being held in the kingdom. The high positions at kingdom, including the army, were either given to the influential families or the relatives of the king. Now Muhammad of Ghazni, who was Muhammad of Ghazni. Sultan Muhammad of Ghazni was the ruler of Afghanistan. He ruled from AD 999 to 1030 and extended control over parts of Central Asia. So he was the ruler of Afghanistan, and he extended his control over Central Asia, Iran, and northwestern part of the subcontinent. He raided the subcontinent almost every year. So basically every year he used to raid all the neighboring continents he had. He raided the His later invasions were specifically directed to temple towns, including that of Somnath. So later, every year he also used to come to India to invade, to attack and take the wealth from India. So when he raided the subcontinent India, his main attraction or his specifically directions were the temples, because at that time in temples there were a lot of wealth that was kept by the king. So his main direction or his main approach were the temples at that time, and the temple of Somnath in Gujarat was one of the prominent target of Muhammad of Ghazni. Gujarat, as Indian temples were depositors of great wealth. So as we all know, Indian temples were had so many wealth in them. So he had obviously always targeted Indian temples when he used to invade India. Much of the wealth that Muhammad carried away was used to create a splendid capital city at Ghazni. So all the wealth that he used to capture and take away with him, he used to use it to make a very beautiful capital, beautiful city of Ghazni. He entrusted a scholar named Al-Biruni to write an account of the subcontinent. So he had a scholar named Al-Biruni, and he asked him to write an account on all the subcontinent he goes to invade. This Arabic work, known as Kitab al-Hind, remains an important source for historians. So this book that was written by Al-Biruni, That was Kitab al-Hind is a very important source of history for the historians, and they get a lot of information from this book. So students, thank you so much. I hope you understood the chapter well. Thank you.